This Wednesday, Poland detected a serious incursion by Russian drones. Dozens of Shaheds crossed into Polish airspace during Russian air attack on Ukraine. Poland, with support from NATO allies, scrambled jets, activated air defenses, and shot several of them down using air-to-air missiles. What makes this more than just another border violation is evidence that these drones were prepared in advance for operations involving Poland. For example, Polish SIM cards were found in drones shot down over Ukraine back in July this year. There are reports of longer-range fuel tanks being used on those drones, and experts believe that these Shaheds were not only being used to attack, but also to scout Polish air defense capabilities. So, as we all understand, this wasn't a simple incident. In fact, it marked a step further in this war. Russian drones using Polish telecommunication equipment and penetrating NATO airspace. If things escalate, Ukraine's long experience in defending against drones and missile attacks could offer valuable lessons for NATO members. In this video, we will take a look at how Ukraine has been detecting, tracking, intercepting, and destroying Russian drones and ballistic missiles since 2022. We will check out what has worked, what hasn't, and what NATO allies should be studying now to strengthen their air defense. In the first months of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine faced a heavy barrage of cruise and ballistic missiles. Russian invaders fired long-range weapons targeting cities, power stations, and Ukrainian military sites, and much of Ukraine's early air defense work went to stopping those missiles under intense pressure. Those strikes came when Ukraine had comparatively few modern systems and had to improvise. Existing problems like radar gaps, limited interceptor stocks, and the need to protect civilian infrastructure made defending everything absolutely impossible. Again, Russia didn't and still doesn't hesitate striking Ukrainian civilians because the terrorists understand that Ukrainians will have to stretch their air defenses to protect houses and kindergartens, which in turn makes protection of strategic objects less effective. On the other hand, if they don't do that, they will face enormous casualties among civilians hit by the Russian missiles and drones. So as Western systems arrived, we're talking NASAMS, IRIS-T units, and later other medium and long-range systems, Ukraine's air defenses started to evolve. These systems reduced the success of the Russian massive missile strikes and gave Kyiv more options to intercept higher value threats. But each new layer that was introduced also reshaped how Russia tried to attack. When Russia's missile campaign could not be relied on alone, Moscow increasingly turned to large numbers of cheap loitering munitions. We're talking Shaheds. These drones were supplied or designed with Iranian help, with intention to overwhelm and saturate Ukrainian air defenses. Basically, Russian terrorists decided to launch as many drones as possible, hoping that some get through, and factically some of them partially succeeded. Eventually, Russia moved to domestic mass production of those drones, building up factories and also the supply lines, so it could launch waves of low-cost drones rather than only expensive missiles. And that shift made the problem worse. It meant many more targets to track and intercept every night. Using very costly interceptors against disposable Russian drones is absolutely unsustainable, and that is why Ukraine has been pushing cheaper countermeasures, including interceptor drones, jamming, guns, and layered short-range systems to preserve its missile stocks for higher value threats. And it seems like the time has come for NATO to finally understand the risk of facing the same dilemma in the future and study these layered, cost-effective approaches that Ukraine had developed and used to defend from the Russian strikes. Ukraine's air defense against the Russian drones and missiles is built in layers. Each layer has its own role, and together they create a system that can respond to different types of aerial threats launched from the terrorist federation. On the ground, there are mobile groups. These units move around quickly, being often provided cars and trucks, and they are armed with machine guns, portable anti-air missiles, and electronic warfare rifles. The mobile groups react to drones that get close to towns, military sites, or other important areas. Their mobility is crucial because they can change positions as the threat moves, considering that the drones launched by the Russian terrorists often change their patterns and trajectory. Then there are Gepard anti-aircraft systems produced in Germany. These are big tracked vehicles with twin 35mm cannons that can fire rapidly at multiple drones at once. Their strongest feature is precision and the ability to change their location really fast. Also, these German machines are especially helpful when Russian drones come in groups. But the downside is that they need a lot of ammunition, so they cannot be used without thinking about proper supplies. On the other hand, 35mm shells are much cheaper than drones or missiles themselves. Ukraine also has modern anti-aircraft systems like NASAMS or IRIS-T, and these can shoot down missiles and high-flying aircraft. But the fact is, they are only used when it's really necessary, because the missiles they fire are very expensive. They're saved for the highest value targets because, generally speaking, Russia is also struggling with producing new missiles due to its failing economy and the lack of foreign components. Fighter jets are part of the air defense system as well. Ukrainian jets carry a full load of air-to-air missiles, but since Russian drones come in hundreds every single night, using air-to-air missiles also becomes too costly. Therefore, Ukrainian pilots often use the cannons on their aircraft to shoot down Russian drones. However, it also requires some really good skills from the pilots. Helicopters like the Mi-24 also help. Armed with machine guns, they can respond to drones where other defenders may not reach. These are highly mobile platforms, basically utilizing the cheapest weapons possible in the most efficient way. The downside, of course, is the limited range and speed of Mi-24, so a helicopter can only intercept so much drones before the wave passes. The civil airplanes are also used to intercept Russian drones over Ukraine. Some have been equipped with jamming devices that can interfere with the signals controlling drones. For example, they can jam the GPS signals and basically land the drone somewhere in the fields. This adds another layer using what is already available in the air. And actually, this solution has been revealed quite recently, but proved to be extremely good because civilian airplanes are highly versatile. They have good characteristics, allowing them to take off and land on the grass strips, and they cost just a fraction of a military fighter jet. And finally, Ukraine is using tiny, low-cost interceptor drones. These are small drones designed to chase and destroy Russian Shaheds, which are slow and low-flying. Some of the Ukrainian drones can take down dozens of enemy drones in one night. The coolest thing about them is cost efficiency, because they cost much lower than anti-air missiles and can be literally printed in massive numbers overnight. Together, these layers make up a pretty efficient network that can detect, track, and destroy drones at different ranges and altitudes. Ukraine has been learning and adjusting as the threats change, trying to save expensive missiles for the most dangerous targets while still stopping as many Russian drones as possible. And my friends, it's really important to understand that we are talking about a completely new era of warfare that unfortunately not a lot of our NATO colleagues are prepared to face today. And let's be honest, we can close our eyes and pretend that every Russian drone attack on a NATO member was just a coincidence, but the reality is based on facts. And the fact is, today Russia is attacking NATO countries with long-range drones. And while our NATO partners were observing the events developing in Ukraine, Ukraine used every available day and every available opportunity to develop and build its own measures to stop Russian drones. And today, when I look at the NATO fighter jets shooting down cheap Russian Shaheds with missiles like AIM-120, I really wish our partners to understand that each drone costs only a fraction of such missile, and they were basically designed by Russians to deplete NATO stockpiles. Hopefully NATO will learn Ukraine's best practices and finally start evolving, because nowadays Russia is not only limited to verbal threats against the West. Today we came to this point when every NATO country must understand that they should be prepared to face real threats coming from Russia and learn the most effective ways of countering those threats. My dear friends, please let me know your thoughts in the comments, and also don't forget to subscribe. My name is Operator Starsky. Thanks for watching.
Subscribe to UATV English and stay updated on the most important events, top news from Ukraine and all over the world, in-depth analysis, exclusive reports and interviews, all on hand in our channel. Join our community of viewers and stay tuned.